I stood on my own son's porch on Christmas Eve, holding the casserole he used to beg me to make, watching him block his own front door like I was a stranger trying to sell him something. Behind him, I could see the glow of the tree we used to decorate together, hear voices laughing. His fiancée's family, I'd learn later. All of them inside, all of them welcome. And then Landon looked me straight in the eye and said the 6 words that would change everything. Sabrina only wants important people here tonight. I want you to stay with me until the very end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this journey reaches. The casserole dish was still warm in my hands. I'd made it that morning in the same glass pan I'd been using for 18 years. My mother's pan, actually, the one with the chipped corner that I'd always meant to replace but never did. Green bean casserole with the crispy onions on top, extra mushroom sauce the way Landon liked it when he was 7, then 12, then 16. The way he'd liked it every single Christmas, until apparently this one. I was early. 20 minutes early to be exact, because that's what you do when your son invites you to Christmas Eve dinner at his new house. You show up early with the dish he requested, wearing the red sweater he once said looked nice, carrying a bottle of wine you can't really afford, but bought anyway because it's Christmas, and he's your only child and you want him to be proud of you. The house looked beautiful. Landon had done well for himself, or rather, Sabrina had done the decorating. I was sure of that now. White lights wrapped around every column, a wreath on the door that probably cost more than my monthly electric bill, one of those fancy winter arrangements on the porch table with real pine branches and silver ornaments. Magazine perfect. The kind of house I used to dream about giving him when he was small, and we were living in that cramped apartment above the laundromat where the heat never worked right. I rang the doorbell, straightening my sweater, balancing the casserole dish on one hip so I could hold the wine bottle properly. I was smiling. I remember that. I was genuinely smiling because despite everything, despite the weird distance that had grown between us over the past year, despite how Sabrina always seemed to cut our phone calls short, despite the canceled lunches and forgotten birthdays, I believed tonight would be different. Christmas fixes things. That's what I told myself. Christmas brings families back together. The door opened. Landon stood there in a sweater I'd never seen before, charcoal gray, expensive looking. He'd gotten a haircut, styled it differently. For a split second, I saw the boy who used to run to me after school, but then his expression registered and that image vanished like smoke. He wasn't smiling. Mom. Not a greeting, just a statement, like he was confirming an unwanted appointment. Merry Christmas, honey. I lifted the casserole slightly. I made your favorite, extra mushroom sauce, just like, you can't come in. The words hung in the cold air between us. I actually laughed, not because it was funny, but because my brain couldn't process what he'd just said as real. What? Landon, Sabrina's family is here. He shifted his position, blocking the doorway more deliberately. Behind him, I heard laughter. A woman's voice, not Sabrina's, older, probably her mother, saying something about the wine selection. More laughter. The warm glow of the house seemed to pulse mockingly. This is a family dinner. I know, sweetheart. That's why I'm here. You invited me, remember? You called last week, and that was before Sabrina finalized the guest list. His voice was flat, rehearsed, like he'd practiced this conversation. She wants to keep things intimate, just immediate family. I stared at him. My son. The boy I'd rocked through colic, walked through nightmares, held when his father died, and the world stopped making sense. The teenager I'd worked double shifts to put through college. The young man I'd co-signed loans for. The person I'd sacrifice anything for without a second thought. Landon, I am your immediate family. I'm your mother. Something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe, or annoyance. I couldn't tell. You know what I mean. No, I really don't. He sighed, actually sighed, like I was being difficult, like I was the problem here. Mom, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Sabrina has a vision for tonight. Her parents are here, her sister, her grandmother flew in from Atlanta. It's important to her that everything goes perfectly. And I would ruin that? My voice cracked. I hated that it cracked. Me being here would ruin her perfect Christmas? You're being dramatic. I stopped. Took a breath. The casserole was getting heavy. My arms were starting to shake, or maybe that was just me, shaking from the inside out. Landon, please. I drove 40 minutes. I brought the casserole you asked for. I just want to have dinner with my son on Christmas Eve. I didn't ask for the casserole. The words hit like a physical slap. Yes, you did. Last week on the phone, you specifically said, Sabrina must have been on the extension. She probably mentioned it to be polite, but that's not the same as actually wanting you to make it. He glanced over his shoulder, lowered his voice. Look, I need to get back inside. They're about to serve appetizers. Landon, Mom, please. You're making this awkward. Awkward. That's what I was. An awkward presence at my own son's Christmas dinner that I wasn't invited to, but somehow was invited to, but actually wasn't. And the casserole I'd spent 3 hours making that morning was just Sabrina being polite. And I was dramatic for expecting to celebrate Christmas with the only family I had left. I looked past him into the house. I could see part of the living room, a massive tree, at least 9 feet tall, covered in gold and silver ornaments. Nothing homemade, nothing with history, no construction paper angels or popsicle stick reindeer or any of the decorations Landon and I had made together over the years. Those were probably in a box somewhere, probably donated, probably thrown away. A woman appeared behind Landon, tall, blonde, wearing a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my car payment. Sabrina. She placed one perfectly manicured hand on Landon's shoulder, her engagement ring catching the light. 3 carats. I knew because Landon had told me, pride in his voice, when he'd announced the engagement 6 months ago. Everything okay, baby? Her voice was sugar sweet, but her eyes were ice. Yeah, just... Landon hesitated. Oh. Sabrina's gaze moved to me, to the casserole, back to me. Her smile never wavered, but something in it sharpened. Mrs. Harper, I wasn't expecting you. She made a casserole, Landon said, like that explained some kind of confusion. How thoughtful. Sabrina's tone made it clear it was anything but. Unfortunately, we're actually all set with the menu. My mother has been cooking for days. We have more than enough food. I can just leave it, I said quietly, hating myself for how small my voice sounded. For later. For leftovers. Our fridge is completely full. I wouldn't want it to go to waste. Sabrina squeezed Landon's shoulder. Baby, your aunt just arrived. You should say hello. Right, yeah. Landon looked at me, and for just a second I saw something in his eyes that might have been regret. But then it was gone. Mom, I'm sorry, but you need to leave now. Landon. Sabrina only wants important people here tonight. The world stopped. I heard the words. I understood them individually. But together, strung into that sentence, coming from my son's mouth, they didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. What did you just say? I didn't mean... He backtracked, but weakly. I just meant that tonight is about Sabrina's family, the people who are important to her, to us. It's not personal. Not personal. I repeated the words, tasting how bitter they were. Me not being important to you isn't personal. That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said, Landon. Sabrina made a soft sound, something between sympathy and impatience. Mrs. Harper, I think there's been a misunderstanding about tonight. This was always meant to be a small gathering. Landon must have forgotten to clarify that with you. She was good. I had to give her that. Her voice was gentle, reasonable, like she was talking to a confused child, like I was the one who'd gotten everything wrong. He invited me, I said, looking at Landon. Only at Landon. You called me. You said to come at 6. You told me. I made a mistake. His jaw was tight. I wasn't thinking clearly. I should have checked with Sabrina first. Checked with Sabrina. Each word felt like pulling glass from a wound. About whether your mother could come to Christmas dinner. She's hosting, he said, defensive now. It's her event, her decision. It's your house too. Actually, Sabrina interjected smoothly, my parents helped with the down payment, so in a way, it's really a family property. My family. The emphasis was slight but unmistakable. My family. Not our family. Not the family that included the woman standing on the porch holding a casserole made in her dead mother's pan. I looked at Landon, waiting for him to correct her. To say something, anything, that acknowledged I was also his family. That I had mattered once, even if I apparently didn't anymore. He said nothing. I should get back inside, Sabrina said, already turning. The prime rib is probably ready. Landon, are you coming? Yeah, just give me a second. She disappeared into the golden warmth of the house, leaving us alone on the porch. The Christmas lights blinked merrily. Somewhere down the street, a car drove past with music playing, Silver Bells, or something equally cheerful. The world was celebrating. Everyone was celebrating except me. Mom. Landon's voice was tired. Please don't make a scene. A scene? I almost laughed. You think this is me making a scene? You're upset, I get it, but upset doesn't even begin to cover what I am right now, Landon. Look, we'll do something next week, okay? Just you and me. We'll get coffee or lunch or whatever. I promise. The promise was hollow, and we both knew it. How many times had he said that over the past year? How many coffee dates had been rescheduled, postponed, forgotten? How many times had I sat alone at a cafe table, checking my phone, making excuses for him to the pitying waitress? Keep your casserole, I said quietly. I don't want it to go to waste. I turned and walked back to my car, carefully, one foot in front of the other. The casserole dish was heavy and hot through the oven mitts I'd forgotten I was still wearing. My vision was blurring, but I refused to let the tears fall. Not here. Not where he could see. Not where Sabrina could watch from whatever window she was probably peering through, satisfied that she'd successfully removed the unwanted guest. I got to my car, put the casserole on the passenger seat, sat down behind the wheel, closed the door. The silence was deafening. Through the windshield, I could see Landon's house lit up like a Christmas card. Perfect. Beautiful. Exclusive. I could see shadows moving past the windows, people gathering, laughing, celebrating. His new family. The important people. I wasn't crying. That was the strange part. I thought I would be sobbing by now, but instead there was just this hollow, echoing emptiness where something vital used to be. Like I'd been scooped out and left with just the shell of myself sitting in this car in the cold. My phone buzzed. A text from my neighbor. Merry Christmas Eve. Hope you're having a wonderful time with Landon. I didn't respond. I started the car, pulled away from the curb, drove through the neighborhood with its elaborate light displays and inflatable Santas and reindeer on roofs. Every house was full of people who wanted to be together. Every house except the one I'd just left, where my presence was an inconvenience, an awkwardness, a thing to be managed and dismissed. The drive home took 40 minutes but felt like hours. I kept replaying the conversation, looking for the moment where I could have said something different, done something better, been someone worthy of being let inside. But there was no such moment. The decision had been made before I ever arrived. I was never meant to be there tonight. Sabrina only wants important people here tonight. The words looped in my head like a song I couldn't turn off. When did I become unimportant to my own son? I pulled into my driveway just before 7. The house was dark. I'd left it that way because I wasn't planning to be home until late, until after dinner and dessert, and maybe watching one of those Christmas movies Landon used to love. I'd imagined us all laughing together, Sabrina maybe warming up to me a little, Landon remembering why we used to be close. I'd been such a fool. I carried the casserole inside, set it on the counter, stared at it for a long moment, this stupid dish I'd made with so much hope. Then I got a fork and ate it standing up in my dark kitchen, crying silently while green beans and mushroom sauce mixed with tears. My phone rang at 9. I almost didn't answer, but the screen showed Landon's name, and some pathetic part of me still hoped this was him calling to apologize, to tell me there'd been a horrible mistake, to ask me to come back. I answered. Hey, Mom. His voice was casual, light, like nothing had happened. Listen, I need to ask you something. Not, I'm sorry. Not, are you okay? Just straight into whatever he needed. What is it, Landon? So, Sabrina and I have been talking about the honeymoon. Wedding in 6 months. Destination wedding. Somewhere expensive that I'd already been told would be small. Immediate family only, which apparently I qualified for this time, though I wasn't holding my breath. We really want to do it right, you know? Make it special. Memorable. Okay. And we were thinking about your beach house. Everything in me went still. The one in Miramar, he continued, oblivious to my silence. It's perfect, right? Private beach access, that huge deck, the hot tub. Sabrina's been looking at pictures and she's absolutely in love with it. So we were thinking maybe for the week after the wedding we could use it, just the two of us. Romantic, exactly what we want. The beach house, the property I'd bought 12 years ago after working 70-hour weeks for 3 years straight. The place I'd furnished piece by piece from estate sales and clearance racks. The deck I'd helped build with my own hands one hot summer. The sanctuary I'd created from nothing through sheer, stubborn determination to have something that was mine. You want to use the beach house, I said slowly. Yeah, it just makes sense, right? It's sitting empty most of the time anyway. And this way we save money on a hotel, which we can put toward the wedding. Sabrina wants to upgrade the flower arrangements. You want me to give you the keys to my beach house? Well, yeah. It's not like you're using it. When's the last time you were even down there? 3 weeks ago? Oh. He paused. Well, still, 1 week. That's all we need. Think of it as your wedding gift to us. My wedding gift? Exactly. Plus, it kind of makes sense that I should have access to it anyway. For the future. Something in his tone sent ice down my spine. What do you mean, for the future? Eventually, all that stuff is going to be mine anyway, right? The beach house, the rental properties, your investment accounts. You've done great with all that, Mom, really. I'm proud of you. But when you're gone, not anytime soon, obviously, but eventually it'll all go to me. So it's kind of like I'm just getting early access. The floor tilted. Landon. I kept my voice very calm, very controlled. What makes you think you're inheriting any of that? He laughed, actually laughed. Because I'm your son? Because that's how inheritance works? Come on, Mom, don't be weird about this. I'm not trying to be morbid. I'm just being practical. Practical? Yeah, Sabrina helped me see it that way. She's really good with financial planning. She actually looked up the estate laws and everything. Did you know that in this state, if you die without a will, everything automatically goes to your children? But you have a will, right? You told me once you had a will. I do have a will. Great. So it's all settled then. Everything comes to me, which means the beach house is basically already mine, kind of. So letting us use it for the honeymoon is really just us using what's already ours, technically. I stood in my dark kitchen, holding the phone, listening to my son explain how my life's work was already his property, and something inside me cracked open. Not broke. Cracked. Like a shell that had been holding something back for far too long. Where did you get these ideas, Landon? What ideas? That my assets are already yours, that you're entitled to my property, that I'm just holding on to things temporarily until you decide you want them. That's not what He fumbled. I'm just saying, logically, as your only child, has Sabrina been asking about my finances? Silence. Landon, has your fiancée been researching my assets? She's just being smart, he said defensively. She wants to make sure we're financially secure, that we know what we're working with. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that is that she's counting money that doesn't belong to her, that doesn't belong to you, my money, my property, my life. Jesus, Mom, you're being paranoid. Sabrina cares about our future, that's all. She wants to know what kind of inheritance we're looking at so we can plan accordingly. That's called being responsible. And when did you two start planning around my death? That's not... You're twisting my words. Am I? The crack inside me was widening. When did you stop seeing me as your mother and start seeing me as a portfolio? Oh my God, you're being so dramatic. I call you on Christmas asking for one simple favor, after you humiliated me on your porch 2 hours ago. And you're turning it into this whole thing. Fine. Forget it. We'll rent a place in Hawaii or something. I just thought you'd want to help us out, but clearly I was wrong. Clearly. You know what? I'm done with this conversation. You're obviously in a mood. Call me when you've calmed down. He hung up. I stood there holding my dead phone in my dark kitchen next to a casserole I'd made for a son who didn't want me at his Christmas dinner, and I started laughing. Not happy laughter. The kind of laughter that comes when something is so absurd, so completely insane, that your brain can't process it any other way. My son thought he owned my beach house. My son thought he owned everything I had. My son had been coached by his fiancée to view me as an asset, and I had been so desperate for his love, so willing to accept any crumb of affection that I'd almost missed it entirely. The laughter died. I set down my phone, walked to my office. The small room I'd converted 5 years ago when I started seriously managing my investments. Pulled out the fireproof box I kept in the closet. Inside were all my important documents, deeds, account statements, and yes, my will. I opened it, read through the familiar language. I leave all worldly possessions to my beloved son, Landon Michael Harper. Beloved, I'd written that will 7 years ago, when Landon was in college and I was still recovering from losing my husband. When Landon still called me every Sunday. When he still said I love you without it sounding like an obligation. When I was still important. I closed the will, put it back in the box, sat on the floor of my office with my back against the wall, and tried to figure out when exactly everything had gone so wrong. I'd done everything right, hadn't I? After David died, I could have fallen apart. Probably should have. Widowed at 38 with a 10-year-old son and a mountain of debt because cancer doesn't care about your savings account. But I hadn't fallen apart. I'd gotten up every single day and gone to work, picked up extra shifts, learned about investing from library books because I couldn't afford classes, bought my first rental property with money I'd saved $1 at a time. I'd built security from nothing, not for me, for Landon, always for Landon. Every rental property was his college fund, his safety net, his future. Every investment was a promise that he'd never struggle the way I had. Every sacrifice was proof that I loved him more than I loved comfort or rest or my own well-being. And he'd turned it into an inheritance he was already spending. My phone buzzed, a text this time, Landon. Also, Sabrina wanted me to ask about the rental properties on Oak Street. Are those still pulling in good money? We might want to sell them eventually and invest in something with better returns, just FYI. I stared at the message. Might want to sell them. We. Like it was already decided, like my input was just a formality. Another text came through. Landon, and can you send me the contact info for your financial advisor? Sabrina thinks we should set up a meeting to go over everything, get a full picture of the estate. Thanks. Estate. I was 56 years old and my son was already dividing up my estate. The crack inside me finished splitting open and something new emerged, something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Anger, not the hot explosive kind. The cold, clear, diamond-hard kind that sees everything exactly as it is without the blurring lens of hope or denial or desperate love. I saw it all now. The past year of distance wasn't Landon being busy with wedding planning. It was Sabrina isolating him, making sure I didn't interfere with her campaign to position him as heir to my assets. The canceled lunches weren't accidents. They were strategic. Keep me at arm's length. Important enough to inherit from, but not important enough to spend time with. And tonight. Tonight wasn't about an intimate family dinner. It was a test. Could Landon reject his own mother on command? Could he prioritize Sabrina's comfort over my dignity? Could he look me in the eye and tell me I wasn't important? He'd passed with flying colors. I thought about the beach house. The one Landon assumed was basically his already. The one I'd bought with money I earned working back-to-back shifts until my feet bled and my back screamed. The one I'd painted myself, furnished myself, poured my soul into because it was mine and I'd earned it. I thought about the rental properties. 4 of them now. Each one bought through careful saving and calculated risk and sheer stubborn refusal to stay in the poverty that had swallowed my childhood. I thought about my investment portfolio. Built from nothing through years of learning, researching, making smart choices while exhausted and terrified of making mistakes. All of it mine. None of it his. Not yet. Not automatically. Not just because he was my son. I picked up my phone, ignored Landon's texts, opened my contacts instead, and scrolled to a name I hadn't called in 2 years. Marcus Chen, a state attorney. We'd met at a community center event and he'd given me his card, told me to call if I ever needed to update my will. I'd never called. The will I had seemed fine. It wasn't fine anymore. I left a voicemail asking for an appointment after Christmas. Then I called a locksmith and scheduled them to come to the beach house tomorrow morning. Then I sat in my dark office and watched the clock tick past midnight into Christmas Day. I'd spent last Christmas with Landon. We'd had breakfast at my place, pancakes and bacon, his favorite. He'd given me a candle and a gift card. I'd given him a sweater and helped him set up his new laptop. We'd watched a movie. He'd fallen asleep on my couch like he used to when he was small. It hadn't been perfect, but it had been something. This Christmas, I was alone in a dark room, planning how to protect myself from my own child. Somewhere across town, Landon was probably asleep in his perfect house, next to his perfect fiancée, dreaming about Hawaii or beach houses or whatever returns he might get from selling my rental properties. I wondered if he even remembered that tonight was supposed to be about family. I wondered if he ever thought about the woman who'd worked herself to exhaustion to give him everything. I wondered if I'd ever been anything more to him than a future payday. The casserole sat on my kitchen counter, still half full, getting cold. I left it there. Let it sit. Let it remind me. Important people only. Tomorrow I would start making changes. Big ones. The kind that couldn't be undone or explained away or softened with excuses. Tomorrow I would start protecting what I'd built. But tonight, on Christmas Eve bleeding into Christmas morning, I let myself sit in the dark and mourn the relationship I thought I had with my son. The one where I mattered. The one where love wasn't measured in real estate and investment returns. The one that apparently had died without me even noticing. My phone buzzed one more time. Landon. Merry Christmas, Mom. Sorry tonight didn't work out. Love you. Love you. 2 words he'd typed probably without thinking, definitely without meaning, absolutely without understanding that love means showing up, means making room, means treating someone like they matter. I didn't respond. Outside, the world was silent and cold and covered in darkness. Inside, something new was being born, something that knew its worth, something that refused to beg for scraps of affection from people who saw it as a resource, something that was done being used. I was done being used, and my son was about to learn that inheritance isn't something you demand. It's something you earn. The locksmith arrived at the beach house at 9 in the morning on December 26th. His name was Joe, 50-something, wearing a company polo shirt that had seen better days. He didn't ask questions when I told him I needed every lock changed, front door, back door, the side entrance that led to the deck, even the storage shed where I kept the beach chairs and umbrella. All of them, I said, standing in the driveway with my arms crossed against the cold wind coming off the ocean. And I need it done today. You got it. He pulled out his clipboard. Any particular reason for the rush? Break-in or something? Something like that. He nodded like he'd heard worse and got to work. I went inside and walked through the rooms, seeing everything differently now. This wasn't just my vacation house anymore. This was ground zero. This was where I drew the line. The living room still had the couch I'd bought at an estate sale 6 years ago, reupholstered myself with fabric I'd found on clearance. The kitchen had the butcher block countertops I'd installed with help from a YouTube tutorial and sheer determination. The bedroom had the handmade quilt my mother had given me the year before she died, the only thing of real value she'd left behind besides the casserole pan. Every inch of this place was mine, built by me, earned by me. Landon had been here exactly 4 times. Twice when I'd invited him down for the weekend and he'd spent most of the time on his phone. Once when he'd needed a place to stay during a conference in the area and treated it like a free hotel. And once with Sabrina, about 8 months ago, when they'd driven down unannounced and I'd spent the whole weekend watching her critique everything. The furniture was outdated, the decor was too beachy, the guest bathroom needed remodeling. I'd smiled through it all. Apologized for the flaws in my own home? Actually apologized. The memory made me want to put my fist through a wall. My phone rang. Landon. I let it go to voicemail. He called again immediately, then again. On the 4th call, I answered. What? Jesus, Mom, finally, where are you? I've been calling all morning. I'm at the beach house. Pause. Why? Because it's my house, and I can be here if I want. Okay, but you didn't tell me you were going down there. I was worried. Since when do I need to report my location to you? Another pause. Longer this time. Are you still mad about Christmas Eve? Still mad. Like it had been a minor disagreement about where to eat dinner instead of him telling me I wasn't important enough to celebrate Christmas with. What do you want, Landon? I want to talk about the beach house situation. You never answered my text about using it for the honeymoon. That's because the answer is no. Silence. Then carefully, no? No. You can't use the beach house. You'll need to make other arrangements. Mom, come on. Don't be petty about this. Petty. That's what I was being. Petty. I'm not being petty. I'm being clear. This is my property. You don't have access to it. I'm your son. And, and, he sputtered, and that means something. You can't just shut me out because you're in a bad mood. I'm changing the locks today, Landon. Even if you still had the spare key I gave you 2 years ago, it won't work anymore. You're what? His voice shot up. You're changing the locks? Are you serious right now? Completely serious. Why would you? This is insane, Sabrina. Can you believe this? His voice became muffled as he turned away from the phone. She's changing the locks on the beach house, like I'm some kind of criminal or something. I heard Sabrina's voice in the background, too low to make out words, but the tone was clear. Outrage. Disbelief. Landon came back on. Sabrina thinks you're being completely unreasonable. Sabrina doesn't get a vote. She's going to be my wife. And this is my house, not hers, not yours, mine. I can't believe you're acting like this. Over what? Because we asked to use the place for a week? This is so typical of you. Typical of me how, exactly? You always do this. You hold things over my head. You make me feel guilty for asking for anything. You act like every favor is this huge burden. I actually laughed. Couldn't help it. Landon, I have given you everything, everything. Your entire life, I have worked myself half to death to make sure you had opportunities I never had. And you think I hold things over your head? See, you're doing it right now. The whole I sacrificed so much for you routine. I didn't ask you to do any of that. The words hit like ice water. You didn't ask me to raise you? To take care of you after your father died? I was 10. I didn't ask you to turn yourself into some kind of martyr about it. Martyr. I tasted the word, let it burn. Is that what you think I am? What? I think you use your sacrifices as leverage. You want me to feel perpetually indebted to you. But I don't, okay? I didn't ask to be born. I didn't ask you to work extra shifts. Those were your choices. Through the window, I could see Joe working on the front door lock. Methodical, professional, removing the old, installing the new. You're right, I said quietly. They were my choices, just like this is my choice. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm done, Landon. I'm done trying to earn your love. I'm done letting you treat me like an ATM with emotions. I'm done pretending that you see me as anything other than a resource to be managed until I die and you can cash out. That's not, you're being crazy. I never said, you said it all on Christmas Eve, and you confirmed it every time you texted me about my rental properties and my investment accounts and my estate. You want to know what I'm worth, not how I'm doing, what I'm worth. Sabrina just wants us to be financially prepared. Sabrina wants my money, and you're either too blind to see it or too greedy to care. Don't you dare talk about her like that. Or what? You'll uninvite me to another holiday? You'll block me from another family event? What exactly are you threatening me with, Landon? Because from where I'm standing, you've already taken everything that matters. His breathing was harsh on the other end. I'm hanging up now. You do that. And when you calm down and realize how ridiculous you're being, don't bother calling me to apologize. I'm done with your drama. Funny, I was just thinking the same thing about you. I hung up, turned off my phone, watched Joe finish installing the new deadbolt on the front door. When he was done with all 5 locks, he handed me a set of keys. That should do it. Nobody's getting in here without your permission now. Thank you. You okay, ma'am? He was looking at me with something like concern. You seem a little shaken up. I'm fine, just dealing with some family issues. Ah. He nodded knowingly. The holidays will do that. Bring out the worst in people sometimes. Sometimes they show you who people really are. That too. He packed up his tools. You take care now. After he left, I sat on the deck watching the ocean and thinking about the phone call. About Landon's voice when he said, I didn't ask to be born. About how easily he defended Sabrina while attacking me. About how my love had become drama and my sacrifices had become leverage and my existence had become an inconvenience. When had it happened? When had I gone from being his mother to being his obligation? I thought back over the past few years, looking for the turning point. Landon had always been a little self-centered. Aren't most only children? But he'd also been sweet, thoughtful in his way. He used to call me on Sunday mornings just to chat, used to text me random things that reminded him of me, used to say, I love you, like he meant it. Then he'd met Sabrina. At first, I'd been thrilled. He deserved love, deserved partnership, deserved someone who made him happy. And Sabrina had seemed perfect on paper. Educated, ambitious, beautiful. She'd smiled at me during our first meeting and said all the right things about how much she'd heard about me, how excited she was to get to know me. But looking back now, I could see the shift. How after that first meeting, Landon's calls became less frequent. How plans started getting canceled. How Sabrina was always just too tired, too busy, too stressed to join us for lunch. How gradually, methodically, I'd been edged out of my son's life. And I'd let it happen. Made excuses for it. Told myself it was natural for a man in love to prioritize his partner. Convinced myself I was being understanding, supportive, modern. I'd been a fool. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I turned it back on out of habit. Another text from Landon. You're making a huge mistake. Sabrina's family is connected, important. They could help me advance my career, but you're too selfish to see past your own hurt feelings. Fine, I'll remember this. I stared at the message. Read it 3 times. Sabrina's family is connected, important. And there it was. The truth underneath everything else. Sabrina came from money, real money, the kind that opened doors and created opportunities, the kind Landon wanted access to, the kind that made my hard-earned properties and carefully built investments look small and common by comparison. I wasn't just competing with Sabrina for my son's attention. I was competing with her entire world, a world where beach houses were assumed, where rental properties were portfolio items to be optimized, where mothers who'd worked themselves to exhaustion to build security from poverty were embarrassing reminders of a class status Landon wanted to leave behind. I texted back, I'll remember this too. Then I blocked his number. The relief was immediate and terrifying, like stepping off a cliff and discovering you could fly, except you weren't sure where you were flying to or if you'd eventually crash. I spent the rest of the day at the beach house, going through closets and drawers, removing every trace of Landon. The photos of him as a teenager, grinning with his boogie board. The seashells we'd collected together during one of those early visits when he'd still been willing to spend time with me. The spare toothbrush I'd kept for him in the guest bathroom. All of it went into a box. Not thrown away. I wasn't that angry, or maybe I was just that sentimental, but packed up, put away, removed from sight. By the time I drove home late that evening, the beach house felt different, lighter, like it had been holding its breath and could finally exhale. Marcus Chen's office called the next morning. They had an opening on the 28th if I was available. I told them I'd be there. The law office was in a strip mall between a dry cleaner and a bubble tea shop. Not fancy, but Marcus had been recommended by 3 different people at the community center, and his reviews online were solid. He met me in the small waiting area himself, shook my hand, led me back to an office crammed with filing cabinets and law books. Mrs. Harper, good to hear from you after all this time. He gestured to a chair. You mentioned wanting to revise your will? I want to completely rewrite it. Okay. Can I ask what prompted this? I'd prepared a sanitized version of the story, something vague about changing family circumstances. But sitting there in his cramped office with its motivational posters and dusty fake plant, I found myself telling him everything. The Christmas Eve rejection, the phone calls about the beach house and rental properties, the texts about my estate, Sabrina's research into inheritance laws. Marcus listened without interrupting, his expression neutral and professional. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. How old is your son? 28? And he's currently employed? He's a marketing manager, makes decent money, not great, but decent. So we're not talking about someone who needs your assets to survive. No, we're talking about someone who wants my assets to upgrade his lifestyle. Marcus nodded slowly. I've seen this before, more often than you'd think. Adult children who start counting their parents' money before the parents are even sick, let alone dead. He pulled out a legal pad. The good news is, you have complete control over your assets. You can leave them to whoever you want. Charity, friends, your mailman. It's entirely your decision. What if I don't want to leave anything to Landon at all? That's your right. I'd recommend including a nominal amount, $1 traditionally, just to make it clear he wasn't forgotten. That you made an intentional choice to disinherit him, prevents him from contesting the will by claiming he was accidentally omitted. The word hung in the air, disinherit. Would that make me a terrible mother? Marcus set down his pen. Can I speak honestly? Please. Being a good mother doesn't mean letting your child treat you like garbage. It doesn't mean sacrificing your dignity to maintain a relationship with someone who sees you as a bank account. And it definitely doesn't mean rewarding cruelty with inheritance. He leaned forward. You worked hard for what you have. You earned it. You get to decide what happens to it. That's not being terrible. That's being smart. But he's my son. And you're his mother. Did that stop him from humiliating you on Christmas Eve? The question landed like a punch. No, I said quietly. It didn't. Then maybe it's time to stop letting family obligation override your common sense. He picked up his pen again. So, who would you like to leave your assets to? I thought about it. Really thought about it. My parents were both gone. I had a cousin in Oregon I hadn't spoken to in 15 years. A few friends from work, but no one close enough to leave a life's worth of property to. What about charity? I asked. Can I set up scholarships or something? Absolutely. We can establish a foundation or direct assets to existing organizations. What kind of cause interests you? I thought about the apartment above the laundromat, about being a young widow with no degree and a child to raise, about how desperately I'd needed help and how rarely it had come. Single mothers, I said, women trying to go back to school or start businesses, women who are doing it alone and need support. Marcus was writing. That's beautiful. We can absolutely make that happen. We spent the next 2 hours going through my assets in detail. The beach house would be sold, proceeds going to a scholarship fund for single mothers pursuing nursing degrees. The rental properties would be placed in a trust managed by a local nonprofit that helped low-income women start small businesses. My investment accounts would fund emergency grants for women escaping domestic violence. Everything I'd built would go to helping women like I'd been. Women who needed it. Women who would appreciate it. Not to my son, who'd simply expected it. And Landon gets, Marcus asked, $1 and a letter explaining why. You want to write a letter? I want him to know exactly why he's getting nothing. I want him to understand that actions have consequences, that you can't treat people like assets and expect them to reward you for it. Marcus made a note. We can attach a letter to the will. It won't be legally binding, but he'll receive it when the will is read. Good. When we finished, Marcus walked me through the timeline. Draft will in a week, final review, and signing in 2 weeks. All official and legal and irreversible once the paperwork was filed. How do you feel? And he asked as I gathered my purse to leave. Lighter, I said. And it was true. The weight I'd been carrying, the obligation to financially reward a son who emotionally rejected me, had lifted. And terrified. That's normal. This is a big decision. What if he changes? What if he apologizes and means it? Then you can change your will again. It's not carved in stone. But Mrs. Harper? He looked at me seriously. Don't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, even if that someone is your son. I drove home thinking about that phrase. Set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. That's exactly what I'd been doing. Burning through my dignity, my self-respect, my sense of worth, all to maintain a relationship with someone who barely acknowledged I existed. Not anymore. My phone, I'd unblocked Landon's number, couldn't help myself, had 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. I read through them at a stoplight. Most were from Landon, escalating from confused to angry to desperate. Why aren't you answering? What's going on? This is ridiculous. You can't just ignore me. Sabrina thinks you're being manipulative. Fine, be childish. The most recent, sent an hour ago. Mom, please, I need to talk to you about something important. It's about the wedding. The last few were from a number I didn't recognize. Then I realized, Sabrina. She'd gotten my number from somewhere. Mrs. Harper, this is Sabrina Cole. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Landon is very upset, and I'd like to resolve this situation before it damages our family relationship further. Our family relationship. Like she was already part of the family, like she had any say in this. Another message. I understand you're concerned about the beach house. Perhaps we could arrange a rental agreement. We'd be happy to pay fair market value for the week. Fair market value. For my own property, that my son thought he was entitled to for free. I didn't respond to any of them. At home, I made myself dinner, scrambled eggs and toast, nothing fancy, and tried to watch TV. Couldn't focus. My mind kept spinning through scenarios. Landon showing up at my door, Sabrina calling my neighbors to complain about me. Some legal challenge I hadn't thought of, but underneath the anxiety was something new, something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. The freedom to say no, the freedom to protect what I'd built, the freedom to demand respect or withdraw completely. It felt strange, wrong, almost. Like I'd been taught my whole life that mothers don't set boundaries with their children, that unconditional love means unconditional access, that wanting to protect yourself from your own family made you selfish. But sitting there in my quiet house with my eggs and toast, I realized something. Unconditional love doesn't mean unconditional tolerance for abuse. Being someone's mother doesn't mean accepting whatever treatment they decide to dish out. And protecting myself wasn't selfish. It was survival. My phone rang again. Landon, of course. This time I answered. What? Oh, thank God. Mom, listen, I'm sorry about earlier. I was stressed and I said things I didn't mean. Can we please just talk like adults? I'm listening. Okay, so the thing is, Sabrina's parents are asking questions about my financial situation. Her dad specifically. He wants to make sure I can provide for her, that I'm stable. And I told him about your properties and investments, about my future inheritance, and he seemed satisfied. But now with you acting weird about everything, I'm worried he's going to think I exaggerated, or that you're cutting me off or something. I closed my eyes. Let me get this straight. You told Sabrina's father that you're inheriting my assets as proof that you're financially stable? Well, yeah, it's the truth, right? Eventually? Landon, you built your entire financial profile to Sabrina's family on money you don't have and might never get? It's not like that. It's exactly like that. You counted chickens before they hatched. Except these chickens belong to someone else, and you never asked if you could count them. Jesus, Mom, you're being so difficult about this. I just need you to confirm to Sabrina's dad that yes, you have assets, and yes, I'm your heir. That's it. 5-minute conversation. Is that really too much to ask? Yes. Silence. What do you mean, yes? Yes, it's too much to ask. I'm not participating in your scheme to impress Sabrina's family with money you haven't earned. Scheme? What scheme? I'm your son. Of course I'm your heir. That's how families work. Not anymore. Another silence, longer and colder. What did you just say? I saw an estate attorney today. I'm rewriting my will. You're not inheriting anything, Landon. Not the beach house, not the rental properties, not the investment accounts, nothing. You're bluffing. I'm not. You can't do that. I absolutely can. And I am. His breathing got loud and ragged. This is because of Christmas Eve, isn't it? Because I didn't invite you to one stupid dinner? Are you seriously that petty? This is because you've made it clear you see me as a trust fund, not a person. This is because you brought your fiancée into my evaluation like she had any right to my assets. This is because you told me to my face that I'm not important and then demanded the keys to my property. My voice stayed calm, cold. You want to know what's petty? Demanding inheritance from someone you won't even eat Christmas dinner with. I was trying to keep the peace. Sabrina's parents were already here. The whole dinner was planned. I couldn't just... You absolutely could have. You chose not to. You chose Sabrina's comfort over my dignity. And now I'm choosing my security over your greed. My greed? My greed? You're the one hoarding assets you don't even use. That beach house sits empty 9 months a year. Those rental properties, you don't even need that income. You could be helping me, helping your only child build a life, but instead you're keeping everything for yourself like some kind of what, Landon? Say it. He didn't. I worked for every single thing I have, I said quietly. While you were sleeping safe in your bed, I was working overnight shifts. While you were playing video games with your friends, I was teaching myself about investments. While you were at college parties, I was fixing toilets and rental properties because I couldn't afford a plumber. I built this life from nothing, from less than nothing, and I did it for you. So you'd have security, so you'd have opportunities, so you'd never have to struggle the way I did. Then help me now. Let me use the beach house. Let me tell Sabrina's dad that I'm inheriting your estate. Give me something to work with here. I gave you everything, Landon, your entire childhood, your education, your sense of security.
I gave you a mother who loved you more than anything in this world, and you threw it back in my face the moment someone richer came along. That's not... Sabrina's not... You're twisting everything. I'm seeing clearly for the first time in years.
Fine, his voice cracked. Fine. Cut me out of your precious will. See if I care. I don't need your money anyway. Sabrina's family has 10 times what you'll ever have. We'll be just fine without you. I'm sure you will be. And don't expect me to come crawling back when you realize what you've done. Don't expect me to be there when you're old and sick and alone. You're making your choice right now, and I'm making mine. The threat landed exactly as he intended. The image of myself elderly and abandoned, dying alone because I dared to set boundaries with my only child. But instead of fear, I felt something else. Relief. Okay, I said. Okay? That's all you have to say? If your love is conditional on inheritance, then I don't want it anyway. Goodbye, Landon. I hung up, turned off my phone, sat in my quiet house, and waited for the grief to hit. It didn't. Instead, there was just this vast, echoing silence where the obligation used to be. The constant low-level anxiety about whether Landon was happy with me, whether I'd done enough, whether I'd said the right thing, whether I'd somehow failed him. All of it gone. I was free. And for the first time in 28 years, I belonged to myself again. The freedom lasted exactly 3 days. On the third day, I came home from the grocery store to find Sabrina sitting on my front porch. Not Landon, just her. Wearing cream-colored pants and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage, her hair perfect despite the January wind, looking like she'd stepped out of a catalog for expensive problems. I almost got back in my car and drove away. But this was my house, my porch, my space that I'd earned. I got out, grocery bags in hand, and walked up the path. Mrs. Harper, she stood, smoothing her pants. I hope you don't mind. I wanted to talk to you privately. How long have you been waiting? About an hour. I wasn't sure when you'd be home. She smiled, and it looked genuine if you didn't look too closely at her eyes. Can we go inside? It's freezing out here. Every instinct screamed no. But I was raised to be polite, to be accommodating, to never make scenes or turn people away from my door. 28 years of motherhood had trained me to prioritize other people's comfort over my own boundaries. Old habits. I unlocked the door and let her in. She followed me to the kitchen while I put away groceries. Didn't offer to help, just stood there watching me like I was a problem she was calculating how to solve. Coffee? I asked, more out of muscle memory than actual hospitality. No, thank you. She perched on one of my kitchen chairs like she was afraid it might be dirty. I wanted to talk to you about Landon. I figured. He's devastated, Mrs. Harper. Absolutely devastated. He hasn't slept in 3 days. He's barely eating. I've never seen him like this. I put the milk in the fridge, closed the door carefully. And you think that's my fault. I think there's been a misunderstanding that's gotten out of control. Her voice was soft, reasonable. The voice of someone trying to talk down a crazy person. Landon told me what happened, about the will, about the beach house, and I understand why you're upset. Christmas Eve was handled poorly. Handled poorly. I turned to face her. Is that what we're calling it? Landon made a mistake. He was trying to juggle too many things, and he made a bad decision. But he's sorry, Mrs. Harper. He really is. He told you to say that? He doesn't know I'm here. I came on my own because I care about him, and I can see this is tearing him apart. I leaned against the counter, crossed my arms. What exactly do you want from me, Sabrina? I want to fix this, for Landon's sake, for all our sakes. She leaned forward, her expression earnest. We're going to be family soon, and family works through disagreements. They don't just cut each other off. Family also doesn't treat each other like ATM machines. Is that what you think this is about? Money? She looked genuinely surprised, which was impressive acting. Mrs. Harper, Landon doesn't care about your money. He cares about you. He's hurt because his mother won't talk to him. He told me 3 days ago that he doesn't need my money because your family has 10 times what I'll ever have. A flicker of something crossed her face. Annoyance, maybe. But it was gone instantly. He was angry. People say things they don't mean when they're angry. And what about all the things he said before he was angry? About my beach house being basically his already? About selling my rental properties for better returns? About my estate and inheritance and financial planning. That was me, Sabrina said quietly. I pushed him to think about those things. It wasn't his idea. The admission caught me off guard. Why? She sighed, and for a moment she looked almost human, almost vulnerable. Because I come from money, Mrs. Harper. Real money. The kind that comes with expectations. And my father has very specific ideas about who I should marry, what kind of man is worthy of me. And Landon is amazing, he really is, but on paper, she trailed off. On paper, he's not rich enough for you. On paper, he doesn't have the kind of portfolio my father expects. She met my eyes. I love Landon. I do. But my father controls my trust fund, and if he doesn't approve of this marriage, I lose access to everything. $20 million just gone. So yes, I encouraged Landon to be aware of his assets, to understand what he brings to the table financially, because I needed to show my father that Landon isn't some broke marketing manager, that he has prospects, inheritance, stability. I stared at her. You used my assets to convince your father that Landon was wealthy enough to marry you. I used the truth. You do have assets. Landon is your only child. Eventually, yes, he would inherit. That's not a lie. It's not your truth to use. Mrs. Harper, please. Her voice took on a desperate edge. If my father doesn't approve this marriage, I lose everything. And Landon has built his entire sense of self around being with me, around being good enough for me. If you take away his inheritance, if you make him look like he was lying to my father, it will destroy him, and probably destroy us. That sounds like a problem between you and your father, and you and Landon, not me. You're his mother. You have the power to fix this. By giving him my beach house? By promising him my estate? By playing along with your deception? By supporting your son's happiness? She leaned forward. Is that really too much to ask? And there it was, the manipulation wrapped in maternal duty. The suggestion that if I really loved Landon, I'd sacrifice my boundaries to make his life easier. That good mothers don't protect themselves when it inconveniences their children. I'd fallen for it 1,000 times before. Every canceled lunch I'd excused. Every forgotten birthday I'd rationalized. Every casual cruelty I'd absorbed. Not this time. Yes, I said, it is too much to ask. Sabrina's expression hardened. The vulnerability vanished like it had never been there. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Landon will never forgive you for this. Then I guess that's his choice. She stood up, smoothed her pants again. My father is a very powerful man, Mrs. Harper. He has connections, lawyers. If you're planning to cut Landon out of your will, we can challenge it. Prove undue influence or diminished capacity or something. We'll tie it up in courts for years. The threat hung in the air between us. You just told me Landon doesn't know you're here, that you came on your own. So when you say, we'll challenge it, you mean you'll challenge it. You'll drag my son into a legal battle against his own mother to get money you just admitted you don't actually need. I need my father's approval, and that requires Landon to look like a man of means. Then maybe you should marry someone who actually is a man of means instead of trying to fake it with my assets. Her eyes went cold. You're going to regret this. Probably, but at least I'll regret it on my own terms. She walked to the door, paused with her hand on the knob. You know what's funny? Landon told me you were difficult, that you were manipulative and always played the victim. I didn't believe him. I thought he was exaggerating, that every mother-son relationship has friction. But you really are exactly what he said. The words were designed to wound, and they did. But I'd been wounded by experts. Sabrina was amateur hour compared to my own son telling me I wasn't important. Get out of my house. She left. I locked the door behind her and stood there shaking. That's when the doubt crept in. The voice that said, maybe I was being difficult. Maybe I was manipulative. Maybe good mothers did sacrifice their dignity for their children's happiness, and I was just selfish and petty and exactly what Landon had said. I made myself tea, sat at my kitchen table, tried to think clearly. The facts were simple. Landon had humiliated me on Christmas Eve. He'd demanded access to my property without asking. He'd counted my money as his before I was even dead. And when I'd set boundaries, he'd lashed out. Those were facts, not manipulation, not victimhood. Facts. And Sabrina had just admitted the entire thing was a scheme to deceive her father. She'd turned my son into a liar and my assets into props in her family drama. I wasn't the villain here, but knowing that didn't stop the voice in my head that said, mothers are supposed to sacrifice. Mothers are supposed to put their children first. Mothers are supposed to love unconditionally, give endlessly, forgive everything. I'd been a good mother for 28 years. Maybe that was the problem. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Harper? A man's voice, deep and professional. This is Richard Cole, Sabrina's father. My stomach dropped. Mr. Cole, I understand there's been some tension between you and my daughter, and by extension between you and Landon. I wanted to reach out personally to see if we might resolve this situation. With all due respect, Mr. Cole, this is between me and my son. I appreciate that. But when it affects my daughter's well-being, it becomes my concern as well. His voice was smooth, practiced, the voice of someone used to getting what he wanted. Sabrina tells me you're planning to disinherit Landon. That's correct. May I ask why? That's personal. Mrs. Harper, I'm going to be direct with you. My daughter loves your son, and I've given this union my blessing based on certain representations about Landon's financial prospects. If those representations turn out to be false, I'll have to reconsider my position. Reconsider meaning what? Meaning I'll withdraw my support for the marriage, and my financial support for Sabrina, which would be devastating for both of them. I closed my eyes. So you're threatening to destroy your daughter's happiness if my son doesn't inherit enough money? I'm protecting my daughter from making a mistake. She's accustomed to a certain lifestyle. If Landon can't provide that through his own means or through inheritance, then he's not the right match. That's between you and Sabrina. It's also between you and Landon. You have the power to secure their future. All you have to do is confirm that your estate will pass to your son as expected. And if I don't, then I pull my support. The wedding is canceled. Sabrina's trust fund goes into lockdown until she finds a more suitable match. And Landon loses the woman he loves because his mother was too stubborn to do right by her own child. The manipulation was masterful. Frame it as my choice, my stubbornness, my failure as a mother. Make me responsible for Landon's broken heart instead of acknowledging that this entire situation was built on lies and greed. Mr. Cole, have you considered that maybe if Landon isn't rich enough for your standards, your daughter shouldn't marry him? That maybe building a marriage on false pretenses about inheritance is a terrible foundation? I've considered that your son misrepresented his financial situation to my family, and I'm giving you the opportunity to make that representation truthful. Otherwise, I'll assume it was fraud. It wasn't fraud. Landon is not entitled to my estate. I earned it. I control it. And I've decided to leave it to charity. Silence. Then, you'd choose strangers over your own son. I choose women who need help over a son who only wants me for my money. Yes. Then you're a fool, Mrs. Harper. And when Landon is alone and miserable because you destroyed his relationship, I hope you'll remember this conversation. He hung up. I sat there holding my dead phone, my tea getting cold, and felt the enormity of what I'd just done. I'd essentially chosen charity over my son's marriage, over his happiness, over his entire future with the woman he loved. The guilt was crushing, but underneath it was anger, because this whole thing was insane. Richard Cole was blackmailing his own daughter into marrying Rich. Sabrina was using my son as a ticket to her trust fund. Landon was lying to his future in-laws about assets he didn't own, and somehow I was the bad guy for refusing to play along. I thought about calling Landon, warning him what was happening, telling him that Sabrina's love came with a price tag and her father's approval came with conditions. But would he believe me, or would he think I was sabotaging his relationship out of spite? Before I could decide, someone knocked on my door, hard, aggressive. I looked through the peephole. Landon. For a moment I considered not answering, but I'd been avoiding this confrontation for days, and it was clearly unavoidable now. I opened the door. He looked terrible. Sabrina was right about that much. His eyes were red-rimmed, his hair uncombed, wearing the same clothes he'd had on Christmas Eve, judging by the wrinkles. "We need to talk," he said. "Come in." He stalked past me into the living room, pacing like a caged animal. "Sabrina's dad just called me. Said you refused to confirm my inheritance. Said you basically told him I was lying about my financial prospects. I told him the truth, that you're not inheriting my estate. Do you have any idea what you just did? Any idea at all? I set a boundary with my own assets. Yes. You destroyed my relationship, he was shouting now. Richard is pulling his support for the wedding. Sabrina's losing her trust fund. Everything is falling apart because you couldn't just play along for 5 goddamn minutes. Play along with what? A lie? Fraud? It's not fraud. You are leaving me your money, or you were, before you lost your mind and decided to punish me for one bad night. It wasn't one bad night, Landon. It was months of you treating me like a retirement plan instead of a person. Oh my God, here we go again with the victim routine. He threw his hands up. You know what your problem is, Mom? You can't handle that I have a life that doesn't revolve around you. You can't handle that I'm building a future with someone else. So you're sabotaging it. I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm protecting myself. From what? From your own son? Jesus Christ, listen to yourself. You sound paranoid. Landon, I kept my voice level. Did Sabrina tell you she came here today? He stopped pacing. What? She was here. We talked. She admitted that she pushed you to inventory my assets because she needed to prove to her father that you were wealthy enough to marry her. That's not... She wouldn't... She told me herself. She said if her father doesn't approve the marriage, she loses her trust fund, $20 million, and she needed you to look like a man of means to get his approval. His face went pale. You're lying. Why would I lie about something you could easily verify by asking her? Because you want to break us up. You've hated Sabrina from the beginning. I didn't hate her. I didn't know her well enough to hate her, but I'm starting to understand her now. I sat down on the couch, suddenly exhausted. Landon, your fiancée is using you, and her father is blackmailing her, and you're caught in the middle. And instead of seeing that, you're angry at me for not funding the deception. This is insane. You're insane. But his voice wavered, like part of him knew I was telling the truth. Ask her, I said quietly. Ask Sabrina if she told me about the trust fund, about her father's approval, about needing you to have inheritance to prove you were worthy. I don't need to ask her. I know her. She loves me. I'm sure she does. But does she love you enough to lose $20 million for you? The question hung there. We both knew the answer. Landon's phone rang. He grabbed it like a lifeline. It's Sabrina. Answer it. He did. Put it on speaker, maybe to prove me wrong, maybe because he needed to hear it himself. Baby, where are you? Sabrina's voice was tight. My dad is freaking out. He's saying the wedding is off unless your mother confirms your inheritance. What did she say to him? I'm at her house now. Pause. Why? She said you came here today, that you told her about the trust fund. Longer pause. Landon, did you? I was trying to fix things. I was trying to help. Did you tell my mother that you needed me to look wealthy for your father? It's not like that. Baby, you're twisting it. Yes or no, Sabrina? Did you say that? Silence. Then, my father has expectations. You know that. I was just being honest with her about what we're dealing with. Landon sank onto the couch next to me, phone still in his hand. So it's true. It doesn't change how I feel about you. Your love comes with a dollar amount, literally $20 million. That's not fair. I can't help what my father... Do you love me, Sabrina? Or do you love what you thought I was worth? Don't do this. Don't let your mother poison you against me. She's been trying to break us up since day one. Answer the question, I heard her crying. Or maybe performing crying. I couldn't tell anymore. I love you, she said. I do. But I also can't lose my entire future because your mother decided to be vindictive. Can't you talk to her? Can't you make her understand how much this matters? Landon looked at me. Really looked at me for the first time in what felt like years. I saw him see me. Not as an asset, not as an obstacle, but as a person who was tired and hurt and done being used. No, he said into the phone. I can't. Landon, please, I need to go. He hung up, sat there staring at his phone. We were quiet for a long time. I'm sorry, he finally said, voice barely above a whisper. For Christmas Eve, for the beach house, for everything. Are you sorry because you lost Sabrina, or are you sorry because you understand what you did? He didn't answer right away. When he did, he was crying. I don't know anymore. I don't know anything anymore. I wanted to comfort him, to pull him into a hug like I did when he was small and the world was too much, to tell him everything would be okay. But I'd learned the hard way that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them sit in the consequences of their choices. You built your relationship on a foundation of my money, I said. Money you didn't have. Money you assumed would be yours. And now that foundation is cracking and you're angry at me for not shoring it up. But Landon, I didn't break this. You did. You and Sabrina did. I thought... He wiped his eyes. I thought I was being smart, planning ahead, being responsible. You were counting someone else's money. That's not planning. That's presumption. You're my mother. I'm your only child. Who else would you leave it to? Women who need it. Women who are where I was 28 years ago. Women who will appreciate it instead of expect it. He absorbed that. So I really get nothing? Not even the beach house? $1 and a letter explaining why. That's cruel. What's cruel is telling your mother she's not important enough for Christmas dinner and then asking for her vacation home a week later. What's cruel is treating someone like an inheritance before they're dead. What's cruel is making your mother feel worthless while simultaneously claiming her worth as your own. He flinched like I'd slapped him. I never meant, but you did. Maybe you didn't mean to. Maybe you got caught up in Sabrina's world and lost sight of what mattered. But intent doesn't erase impact. He sat there, broken and lost, and I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the possibility of it. The small, fragile beginning of maybe. What do I do now? He asked. I don't know, Landon. That's up to you. Sabrina's going to leave me. Probably. I'll lose everything. You might, or you might discover what you really had wasn't worth keeping. He looked at me with red eyes and something like understanding finally breaking through. I really messed up, didn't I? Yeah, I said. You really did. Landon didn't leave my house that night. He sat on my couch staring at his phone while Sabrina called 17 times in 2 hours. He didn't answer, just watched it ring and ring, her name lighting up the screen like an accusation. You should probably talk to her, I said around 11, bringing him coffee I wasn't sure he'd drink. And say what? Whatever you need to say. I don't know what I need to say. He took the coffee, held it without drinking. Everything I thought I knew is just wrong. The wedding, the future we planned, all of it was built on your money. Money I don't have, money I was never supposed to just assume was mine. No, you weren't. She's going to leave me. He said it flatly, like he was testing how the words felt. Her dad already pulled support for the wedding. Without the trust fund, without my inheritance to fall back on, she'll realize I'm just... He stopped. Just what? Not enough. Not what she signed up for. I sat down in the armchair across from him. My back was killing me from the stress of the past week, but I didn't say anything. Landon, if someone only wants you when you come with money attached, they don't actually want you. Easy to say when you're not the one losing everything. I lost my husband at 38. I lost my security, my future, my sense of safety, and I had a 10-year-old depending on me. So don't tell me I don't know what loss feels like. He flinched. That's different. How? Dad died. He didn't choose to leave you. And Sabrina choosing to leave you because you're not rich enough is supposed to hurt less? He didn't answer, just sat there looking young and broken and nothing like the confident man who'd stood in his doorway on Christmas Eve telling me I wasn't important. His phone buzzed. A text this time. He glanced at it, and his face went white. What is it? Sabrina. She says if I don't convince you to reinstate my inheritance by tomorrow, she's calling off the engagement. He looked up at me. Can you believe that? An actual ultimatum. I can believe it, yes. She says she loves me, but she can't marry someone who lied to her family about his financial situation, that her father will never forgive the humiliation, that I've put her in an impossible position. He read from his phone, voice hollow. She says, if you really loved me, you'd fix this with your mother. You'd find a way. But I'm starting to think you care more about your pride than our future. That's manipulation.
Is it? Or is she right?
Am I being prideful? Should I just... He gestured helplessly. Should I just beg you to change the will so I don't lose her?
The question hung there. This was the test. The real one. Not Christmas Eve, not the phone calls about the beach house. This moment, right here, where he had to choose between demanding my compliance or accepting his reality. You could beg, I said quietly. I probably wouldn't change my mind, but you could try. But you don't think I should. I think you should do whatever you can live with. But Landon, if you beg me to give you inheritance, you haven't earned so you can keep a woman who only wants you if you're rich. What kind of man does that make you? He closed his eyes. The kind of man who'd block his own mother from Christmas dinner because his fiancée didn't want her there. Yeah, I really am that guy, aren't I? I became exactly that guy, and I didn't even notice. People don't usually notice while it's happening.
His phone rang again. Sabrina. He stared at it, then declined the call. Then he blocked her number. I watched him do it, surprised.
What are you doing?
I don't know. Making a choice, I guess. He set his phone down on the coffee table like it was something dangerous. She gave me an ultimatum. Well, here's mine. If the only way to keep her is to manipulate my mother into giving me money that isn't mine, then I don't want to keep her. You might regret that tomorrow. Probably, but I'll regret it as someone who didn't sell out his mother. That's got to count for something. We sat in silence for a while. The house creaked around us, familiar sounds I'd stopped noticing years ago. The refrigerator humming, the heater kicking on. The quiet soundtrack of a life I'd built alone. Can I ask you something? Landon said finally. Sure. When did I become this person? When did I turn into someone who'd treat you like that? I thought about it. Really thought about it. I don't think there was one moment. I think it was gradual. You met Sabrina and she came from a world where everything was easy, where money was just there, where value was measured in assets and connections. And you wanted to belong in that world. So you started seeing yourself through their eyes, through her eyes. And in her eyes, you were just a resource, an inheritance, a portfolio. I'm so sorry, Mom. He was crying again. I'm so fucking sorry. I know. Do you forgive me? The question I'd been dreading, because the honest answer was complicated. I don't know yet, I said. Ask me again in a few months. He nodded, wiping his eyes. That's fair. You can stay here tonight if you want. Guest room's made up. Yeah? Yeah, but Landon, this doesn't change the will. This doesn't change my boundaries. You understanding what you did wrong doesn't automatically fix everything. I know. He stood up, exhausted. Thank you. For the room, and for not kicking me out. You're still my son. I'm just not your inheritance anymore. He went upstairs. I heard the guest room door close, then the sound of the shower running. I sat in my living room alone and tried to figure out what I was feeling. Relief, partly. That he'd finally seen it. Finally understood. But also grief. Because even if we rebuilt our relationship from here, it would never be what it was. That innocence was gone. The trust was broken, and some breaks don't heal smooth no matter how much time you give them. I went to bed around midnight but didn't sleep much. Kept expecting Landon to knock on my door to tell me he'd changed his mind, to ask one more time about the inheritance. He didn't. In the morning, I made coffee and toast. Landon came down around 8, looking like he'd slept as poorly as I had. Morning, he said. Morning. Coffee's ready. We sat at the kitchen table like we used to when he was in high school. Before college, before Sabrina, before everything got complicated. For a moment, it almost felt normal. Then his phone rang. Not Sabrina's number, he'd blocked that, but a number with the same area code. He answered cautiously. Hello? I watched his expression change from confused to shocked to something close to panic. What? When? Is she... Okay. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up. Stood up so fast his chair scraped. That was Sabrina's sister. Sabrina's in the hospital. She took pills. A lot of pills. My stomach dropped. Is she... They pumped her stomach. She's alive, but... He grabbed his keys. I have to go. Landon, I know what you're thinking, that this is manipulation. that she's doing this to get to me. But what if it's not? What if she actually... He couldn't finish the sentence. Go. Be with her. We'll talk later. He left. I sat alone in my kitchen with cold coffee and toast I couldn't eat, feeling sick. Because he was right. My first thought had been manipulation. Sabrina pulling a desperate move to get Landon back. To force my hand. To create a crisis that would make me the villain if I didn't give in. But what if I was wrong? What if she'd actually tried to kill herself and it was somehow my fault for not just playing along? The guilt was immediate and crushing. I tried to go about my day. Did laundry, paid bills, vacuumed. All the normal tasks that felt absurd given what was happening. Around noon, my phone rang. Marcus Chen. Mrs. Harper, I wanted to let you know your new will is ready for review. Can you come in this week? I'd completely forgotten about the will in the chaos of the past 24 hours. Actually, I need to put that on hold. Is everything all right? My son's fiancée is in the hospital. She attempted suicide last night, and I'm wondering if... My voice cracked. I'm wondering if I pushed too hard. If I should have just given them what they wanted. Silence. Then Marcus said very carefully, Mrs. Harper, if someone attempts suicide because they're not getting access to someone else's money, that is not your fault. That is a mental health crisis that existed long before you set boundaries. But what if the boundary was the trigger? Then the problem is still the mental health crisis, not the boundary. You don't get to hold someone hostage by threatening self-harm. That's not how healthy relationships work. She's 26 years old. What if she dies because I wouldn't play along with a lie? Then she died because she needed professional help that she didn't get. Not because you protected your assets. His voice softened. I know this is hard. I know you're second-guessing everything. But Mrs. Harper, you did nothing wrong. Setting boundaries is not abuse. Protecting yourself is not cruelty. And you cannot light yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, even if they're threatening to freeze. I heard the phrase again, the same one he'd used before. Don't set yourself on fire. I need to think about this, I said. Take your time. The will can wait. But please, don't let guilt manipulate you into undoing the healthy decision you made. After I hung up, I sat in my quiet house and tried to separate my genuine concern for a young woman in crisis from the manipulation Marcus was warning me about. The truth was probably somewhere in the middle. Sabrina probably did have mental health issues, and she probably was also using them as leverage. Both things could be true at once, but that didn't tell me what to do about it. Landon called that evening. She's awake, stable. They're keeping her for psychiatric evaluation. Thank God. She wants to see you. What? Sabrina. She's asking for you. Says she needs to apologize. Every alarm bell in my head went off at once. Landon, I don't think that's a good idea. Please, Mom, just 10 minutes. She's really messed up right now, and I think seeing you might help. Help how? I don't know. Help her understand that this isn't all falling apart, that there's still a chance for... He stopped. A chance for what? For me to change my mind about the will? No, that's not... But he didn't sound sure. Just come. Please. She's at Mercy General, room 412. I almost said no. Should have said no. But some part of me needed to see her, needed to look her in the eye and know whether this suicide attempt was real or performance. I drove to the hospital feeling like I was walking into a trap. Mercy General was quiet on a Tuesday evening. I found room 412 on the 4th floor. Landon was sitting outside in one of those uncomfortable plastic chairs, looking wrecked. She's awake, he said. But Mom, she looks really bad. They've got her on suicide watch. Someone has to be in the room with her at all times. Is anyone in there now? Her sister, but she said she'd step out when you arrived. I nodded, prepared myself, went in. Sabrina was in the hospital bed looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. No makeup, hair unwashed, wearing a standard hospital gown, an IV in her arm. She looked young and broken and nothing like the polished woman who'd sat in my kitchen issuing threats. Her sister, I'd never met her before, stood up when I came in. I'll give you two some privacy. Then it was just me and Sabrina. Mrs. Harper, her voice was hoarse. Thank you for coming. How are you feeling? Stupid. Embarrassed. Like I ruined everything. She tried to smile, but it came out wrong.
The doctors keep asking me if I actually wanted to die or if I was trying to get attention. Honest answer? I don't know. Both, maybe. At least she was being honest. Landon said you wanted to see me. I wanted to apologize for everything, for manipulating him, for using you, for turning your relationship with your son into a transaction. Tears started rolling down her face. I didn't see it while I was doing it, or I did see it, but I told myself it was fine because everyone does it, right? Everyone uses connections and assets and family money to get ahead. But I turned your son into a liar. I turned myself into someone who'd rather die than face my father without a trust fund. And I'm so sorry. The apology sounded genuine, but I'd been fooled before. Why did you take the pills, Sabrina? She was quiet for a long time. Because my father called me yesterday after Landon left your house. He said I was an embarrassment, that I'd humiliated the family by choosing someone so far beneath our class, that I'd proven I couldn't be trusted with money or decisions or anything important. And he was cutting me off completely. Not just the trust fund, everything, my credit cards, my apartment, my car. All of it gone. So you tried to kill yourself because your father disowned you. I tried to kill myself because without his approval, without his money, I'm nothing. I've never worked a day in my life, Mrs. Harper. I don't have skills, I don't have education that actually matters. I have a degree in art history and a closet full of designer clothes and absolutely zero ability to function in the real world. And the thought of having to start from nothing, of having to be poor, of having to struggle. She closed her eyes. I couldn't face it. I'd rather be dead. The honesty was almost painful. And Landon? I do love him. I know you don't believe that, but I do. He's kind and he makes me laugh and he sees me as more than my father's daughter. But I also know I can't marry him now. Not without money. Not when I just drag him down into my mess. She looked at me. I'm not asking you to change your will. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry and that you were right about everything. I stood there looking at this broken young woman who'd almost ended her life because she couldn't imagine surviving without wealth, and I felt something unexpected. Pity. Sabrina, you're 26 years old. You have your whole life ahead of you. You can learn skills. You can work. You can build something for yourself like I did. I'm not like you. I'm not strong like that. You don't know what you are yet. You've never had to find out. She shook her head. It's too late. I've already ruined everything. It's only too late if you decide it is. But I could see in her eyes she'd already decided. She'd already written herself off as someone who couldn't survive without her father's money. And maybe she was right. Maybe she'd been so carefully groomed for a life of luxury that stripping it away had broken something fundamental. Or maybe she was still manipulating me, playing the victim to extract sympathy. I honestly couldn't tell anymore. I should go, I said. Mrs. Harper? She called as I reached the door. Do you think Landon will ever forgive me? I don't know. That's between you and him. Do you think you'll ever forgive him? The question stopped me. I don't know that either, but I hope so. I left her there in her hospital room with her suicide watch and her ruined trust fund and her uncertain future. Landon was still waiting outside. How was she? He asked, honest, or performing honesty. I can't tell anymore. Yeah, me neither. He ran his hands through his hair. The doctors say she needs intensive therapy. Her father refuses to pay for it, says this is what happens when you make bad choices, that she needs to face consequences. What are you going to do? I don't know. I can't afford the kind of treatment she needs. My insurance won't cover her. And even if I could, I don't know if I should. Is helping her enabling her, or is leaving her to struggle actually cruel? Those are questions only you can answer. You're really not going to tell me what to do. No, I'm not, because this is your life, Landon, your choice, your consequences, and you need to figure out how to live with them. He nodded slowly. The engagement's off. She told me this morning, said she can't marry me without her father's support, that it wouldn't be fair to either of us. How do you feel about that? Relieved, devastated, both? He laughed, but it sounded broken. I thought I loved her enough to fight for her. But when she actually needed me, when she needed me to choose her over everything else, I couldn't do it. I kept thinking about what you said, about not setting myself on fire, and I realized I'd already been burning for months trying to keep her warm. I pulled him into a hug. He clung to me like he was drowning. I'm sorry, Mom. For all of it. I know. Can we fix this? Us? Maybe. If you mean it. If you actually change. I want to. I really want to. Then start by figuring out who you are without Sabrina, without her money, without my inheritance. Just you. Figure out what you actually want instead of what other people told you to want. That sounds hard. It is, but it's worth it. We stood there in the hospital hallway holding each other while nurses walked past and machines beeped, and somewhere down the hall someone was crying. And I thought about how sometimes love means letting people fall, letting them hit bottom, letting them feel the full weight of their choices instead of cushioning the landing with money or forgiveness or unconditional tolerance. I'd cushioned Landon's whole life, protected him from consequences, made everything easy, and it had turned him into someone who expected the world to bend around his comfort. Not anymore. If we were going to rebuild our relationship, it had to be on different terms. Terms where he didn't get my money just for existing, where my love wasn't measured in assets, where boundaries were respected instead of negotiated. It would take time, maybe years, maybe forever. But for the first time since Christmas Eve, I had hope that it might actually be possible. The weeks after the hospital were strange. Landon called me every Sunday morning, like he used to years ago. Except now the calls were awkward and careful. We talked about the weather, his job, the weird noise my car was making, safe topics that didn't require us to address the wreckage between us. He never asked about the will. Never mentioned the beach house or the rental properties or inheritance. It was like he'd surgically removed that entire vocabulary from our conversations. I didn't know if that meant he'd actually changed or if he was just trying a different strategy. Sabrina stayed in the psychiatric facility for 3 weeks. When she got out, she moved back to Atlanta with a distant aunt, according to what Landon told me. Her father still wouldn't speak to her. The trust fund was permanently gone. She'd taken a job, her first job ever, as a receptionist at a dentist's office, making $14 an hour. She called me last week, Landon said during one of our Sunday calls in late February. She sounded different, tired, but also kind of real. Are you still in touch with her? Sort of. She texts sometimes, apologizes a lot. I don't really know what to say back. He paused. She asked if I hated her. Do you? No, I'm angry. Yeah, but I don't hate her. I think she was just as trapped as I was. Maybe more. At least I had you. She had a father who valued her like a stock portfolio. It was the most insightful thing I'd heard him say in years. That's very mature of you. I'm trying. Therapy helps. You're in therapy? Yeah, started 2 weeks ago. I can't afford the fancy kind Sabrina needed, but there's a sliding scale place near my apartment. It's helping me figure out a lot of stuff. He sounded embarrassed. The therapist asked me to write down all the ways I'd been using you emotionally and financially. The list was 3 pages long, Mom. 3 pages. I didn't know what to say to that. Anyway, he continued, I'm working on it. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I wanted you to know I'm trying. I appreciate that. Are you still going through with the will, the disinheritance thing? There it was, the question I'd been waiting for. Yes. Silence. Then, okay. I figured, just wanted to confirm. Does that make you angry? It makes me sad, but I understand why. And honestly, I think it's probably fair. I don't deserve your money, Mom. I didn't earn it. I just expected it because I got used to everything being easy. His voice got quiet. I'm starting to understand how hard you worked, how much you sacrificed, and I'm ashamed it took losing everything for me to see it. I felt tears starting and pushed them back. Landon, you don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know I get it now, finally. After we hung up, I sat with my coffee and thought about forgiveness. How it's not a light switch you flip. How it's more like a muscle you rebuild slowly, carefully, testing if it can hold weight yet. I wasn't there yet, but maybe someday. Marcus called in March. Mrs. Harper, I need to finalize your will. We've had the draft ready for 2 months. Are you ready to sign? I thought about Landon's therapy, his Sunday calls, his acknowledgement of what he'd done, the slow, painful growth I was watching from a distance. Not yet, I said. Give me another month. May I ask why?
Because I need to see if this change is real or if he's just waiting me out. Fair enough. But Mrs. Harper, don't let hope make you vulnerable again. People can change. They can also just get better at manipulation. I know. I'm being careful. Good. Call me when you're ready. I spent March watching Landon from a cautious distance. He got a promotion at work. Associate Director of Marketing. Better pay. He moved to a smaller apartment to save money, downsizing from the place he'd shared with Sabrina. He sold his car and bought a used one that was 7 years old but ran fine. He was learning to live within his means instead of beyond them, learning to value things he'd earned instead of things he'd expected, and he never once asked me for money. In early April, he called on a Wednesday instead of Sunday. Mom, I need to tell you something, and I don't want to wait until this weekend. My stomach clenched. Here it comes. The ask. The manipulation I'd been waiting for. What is it? I hired a financial advisor, a real one, not Sabrina's dad's people. And I've been going through my finances, trying to clean up my spending, and I realized I still have the spare key to your beach house. From 2 years ago. I know you changed the locks, but I wanted to mail it back to you anyway. As like a symbolic thing, I guess, that I'm not holding on to it hoping you'll change your mind, that I accept your boundaries. I actually laughed. Landon, that key doesn't work anymore. You could throw it away. I know, but sending it back to you feels important, like I'm officially giving up the idea that I'm entitled to your stuff. Okay, send it back then. Also, the financial advisor asked about my inheritance expectations, for planning purposes, and I told him I'm not inheriting anything, that my mother is leaving her estate to charity, and he said that was admirable, that more people should support causes bigger than themselves. Landon's voice got thick, and I realized I should have said that to you months ago, that what you're doing with your money is admirable, that those scholarships for single mothers will change lives, that you're doing something that matters, and I'm proud of you, Mom. I should have said that first instead of getting angry. I was crying now, couldn't help it. Thank you for saying that. I mean it. I really do. After that call, I went to my office and pulled out the box with my will, read through it again, the provisions directing everything to scholarships and business grants and emergency funds for women who needed help. It was good. It was right. It would do real good in the world. But I called Marcus the next morning. I want to revise the will, not scrap it, just revise. What kind of revision? I want to leave the beach house to Landon, but with conditions. He can't sell it for 10 years. He has to maintain it, use it, take care of it. And if he violates those terms, it goes to charity instead. And the rest of the estate still goes to the foundations. But I want to add a provision that if Landon demonstrates genuine change over the next 5 years, measured by things like financial responsibility, maintaining our relationship, contributing to charity himself, he can earn back up to 20% of the estate, not as inheritance, as reward for growth. Marcus was quiet for a moment. That's an unusual structure. I know, but I don't want to punish him forever for mistakes he's genuinely trying to fix. I also don't want to reward him prematurely before I know the change is real. This feels like middle ground. It's creative, I can draft it. But Mrs. Harper, you understand this means staying involved in evaluating his behavior for years, keeping records, making judgments about his growth. It's not a clean break. I don't want a clean break anymore. I want a relationship built on something real. This structure forces both of us to work for it. All right, give me 2 weeks. I didn't tell Landon about the revision. Didn't want him performing growth to earn inheritance. If the change was real, it would happen regardless. If it wasn't, I'd know. May came. Then June. Our Sunday calls continued. Landon started sending me articles he thought I'd find interesting, photos of his new apartment, a recipe he'd tried that reminded him of something I used to make. Small things. Normal things. The kind of things families do when they actually like each other. In July, he asked if he could visit. Not to stay at the beach house, he clarified immediately. I'll get a hotel, but I'd like to see you. Maybe we could get dinner? You don't need a hotel. You can stay in my guest room. Are you sure? I don't want to assume. I'm sure. He came down on a Saturday in late July, pulled up in his used Honda, wearing jeans and a t-shirt instead of the expensive clothes Sabrina used to buy him. He looked more like the son I remembered, less polished but more genuine. We had dinner at a seafood place near the water. Nothing fancy, split an appetizer, Talked about his promotion, his therapy, a book he was reading. I saw Sabrina's on Facebook, he mentioned over dessert. She posted about getting her own apartment, a studio. Said it's the first place she's ever paid for herself and she's proud of it. How does that make you feel? Happy for her, I guess. She's learning what you tried to teach me, that building something yourself means more than inheriting it. Do you still love her? He thought about it. I love who she might become, but I don't miss who she was. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. That night back at my house, we sat on the porch with coffee and watched the ocean. Quiet, comfortable, like we used to before everything got complicated. Mom, can I ask you something? Why did you let me stay in the guest room? After everything I did, why aren't you still punishing me? Because punishment wasn't the point. Boundaries were the point. And you've been respecting them, consistently, for months. That means something. Does it mean you forgive me? I looked at my son in the porch light, at the genuine uncertainty in his face, and realized something. Forgiveness wasn't something I'd decided to give one day. It had been happening gradually, in small doses, every time he showed up without asking for anything. Every Sunday call where he just wanted to talk. Every boundary he respected without arguing. Yeah, I said. I think I do. He cried. Not dramatic sobbing, just quiet tears running down his face. I don't deserve that. Maybe not, but I'm giving it anyway. That's what love is. Not the kind of love Sabrina and I had. No, real love. The kind that survives disappointment. We sat there together, and I felt something I hadn't felt since before Christmas Eve. Peace. Not the fragile kind that shatters at the first conflict, but the solid kind built on truth and boundaries and genuine connection. August brought news that surprised both of us. Sabrina was engaged. To a teacher she'd met at the dentist's office where she worked. Someone who made $40,000 a year and drove a 15-year-old truck and had never heard of her father or his money. She sent me a picture of the ring, Landon said during our Sunday call. It's tiny, like embarrassingly tiny compared to what I gave her. But she said it's the most beautiful thing she's ever owned because he saved for 6 months to buy it. That's growth. Yeah, real growth, he paused. She thanked me, actually. Said losing everything forced her to find out who she was, and she likes that person better than who she was trying to be. What about her father? Still won't talk to her. Probably never will. But she said she's okay with it, that his love always had too many conditions anyway. I thought about conditions, about the revised will sitting in Marcus's office with its benchmarks and requirements, about whether I was any better than Richard Cole, attaching strings to my affection. But there was a difference. Richard demanded Sabrina be something she wasn't, wealthy, compliant, an extension of his ego. I was asking Landon to be something he already was underneath the greed and manipulation, kind, responsible, capable of genuine love. One was control, the other was growth. I hoped I knew the difference. In September, I signed the revised will. Marcus witnessed it, made it official, filed it properly. You're sure about this? He asked. I'm sure. If Landon stays on track, he'll get the beach house and a chance to earn back some of the estate. If he backslides, the charities still get everything. Either way, good things happen. That's a healthy way to look at it. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in months. The will was done. The boundaries were set. And for the first time since Christmas Eve, I knew exactly where I stood with my son. Not on unstable ground that shifted based on his mood or Sabrina's influence or his perception of what he could get from me. On solid ground. Ground I'd built myself. Ground that wouldn't collapse just because he was disappointed. October marked almost a year since everything fell apart. Landon called on the anniversary of that terrible Christmas Eve. I've been thinking about this day for weeks, he said, about what I did, what I said, how I made you feel. Landon, no, let me finish. I want to tell you what I should have said that night, what I wish I could go back and say. He took a breath. I should have told Sabrina that you were coming to dinner and she'd need to make room. I should have stood at that door and hugged you and taken your casserole and introduced you to everyone as the most important person in my life. I should have been proud of you instead of ashamed, and I'm so sorry I wasn't. I appreciate that. I know I can't undo it, but I want you to know that if I could, I would, in a heartbeat. I believe you. You do? Yeah.
I do. The relief in his voice was palpable. Thank you. That means everything. November came. Thanksgiving. Landon asked if he could host it at his apartment this year. Small gathering, just the two of us. I said yes. He made turkey, stuffing from a box but homemade mashed potatoes, rolls from the grocery store bakery. Nothing fancy but made with effort. We sat at his small table and said what we were grateful for. I'm grateful you didn't give up on me, he said, even when I gave you every reason to. I'm grateful you did the work to become someone I don't need to give up on, I said. We ate and talked and laughed at his slightly dry turkey, and it was the best Thanksgiving I'd had in years. December arrived. Christmas Eve came around again, 1 full year since the door slam heard round the world. Landon invited me to dinner. At his place again, nothing elaborate. I know last year was... He couldn't finish. I just want to do it right this time. I'd love to come. I showed up at 6 with a green bean casserole made in my mother's pan, the one with the chipped corner, the one I'd held on that porch a year ago while my son told me I wasn't important. Landon opened the door immediately, smiled so wide I thought his face might crack. You made the casserole. You bet I did. Extra mushroom sauce. He took it from me carefully, like it was precious, set it on his counter, then hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Thank you for coming, he whispered. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being my mom, even when I didn't deserve it. You're my son. That doesn't come with conditions, but boundaries. Yes, but boundaries aren't conditions. They're protection. There's a difference. We spent the evening together, just the two of us, eating dinner, watching a movie, talking about his plans for the new year. He'd started volunteering at a nonprofit that helped low-income families with financial literacy, teaching them about budgeting and saving and investing. I figured if you were going to leave your money to help people, I should probably help people too, he explained, with what I know. What you taught me, even if I wasn't paying attention at the time. I'm proud of you. Yeah? Yeah. As I drove home that night, I thought about the journey from last Christmas to this one. From standing on a porch being told I wasn't important enough to sitting at a table where I was the guest of honor. It hadn't been easy. There were moments I'd wanted to give in, to soften the boundaries, to forgive too quickly just to end the pain. But I'd stood firm, and it had worked. Not because Landon was perfect now. He wasn't. He still had moments of entitlement, still struggled with money anxiety, still occasionally said things that reminded me he was a work in progress. But he was progressing, genuinely. And that mattered more than perfection. In January, I got a letter from the nonprofit Landon volunteered with. They'd nominated me for their annual award recognizing community members who supported their mission through charitable giving. Apparently, Landon had told them about my estate planning and the scholarships I was funding. The award ceremony was in March. I almost didn't go, never been comfortable with public recognition, but Landon asked me to attend. Please, Mom, I want people to see what you built, what you're doing with it. I want them to know that you didn't just give me money. You gave me something better. You gave me an example. So I went. They gave me a plaque and a nice speech about supporting single mothers and funding education and creating opportunities for women who needed help. Landon stood in the audience crying the whole time. Afterward, a young woman approached me, early 20s, holding a baby on her hip. Mrs. Harper, I'm Maya. I received one of your scholarships last year. I'm in nursing school now because of you. I just wanted to say thank you. You changed my life. I looked at her, at this young mother who reminded me so much of myself at her age, and realized something profound. This was what I'd built everything for. Not for Landon's inheritance, not for a legacy with my name on it. For this moment where my sacrifice mattered to someone who needed it. You're going to be an amazing nurse, I told her, and you're going to help so many people. I hope so. That's the goal, to give back what was given to me. After she walked away, Landon came up beside me. That's the third person tonight who thanked you, the third life you changed, and there are going to be hundreds more, thousands maybe. He put his arm around my shoulders. This is better than leaving it all to me. You know that, right? This matters more. You matter too. I know. But this matters more, and I'm okay with that, better than okay. I'm grateful for it. We stood there together watching the reception,
watching people network and laugh and celebrate community, and I felt complete in a way I never had when my entire identity was wrapped up in being Landon's mother. I was more than that now. I was a woman who'd built something meaningful, who'd survived loss and betrayal and heartbreak, who'd set boundaries even when it cost her, who'd chosen dignity over desperation, and somehow, in choosing myself, I'd gotten my son back too. Not the entitled version who saw me as an ATM. The real version. The one who understood that love isn't about what you can extract from someone, but what you're willing to build together. In April, I told Landon about the revised will, about the beach house provision, and the potential to earn back part of the estate. I don't want you performing for it, I said. I want you to keep growing because it's right, not because there's money attached. But I also want you to know that I see the work you're doing, and it matters to me. He was quiet for a long time. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep being honest. Keep going to therapy. Keep volunteering. Keep building a life you're proud of. That's all I want. I can do that. I am doing that. I know. That's why I revised the will. Mom, can I tell you something?
I don't care about the money anymore. I mean, I'm not going to pretend it doesn't matter or that I wouldn't appreciate inheriting the beach house someday. But it's not why I'm doing this. It's not why I changed. He looked at me with clear eyes. I changed because I couldn't stand who I'd become. The man who made his mother cry on Christmas Eve. The man who valued assets over people. I don't want to be that person ever again. You're not that person anymore. I hope not. I'm trying not to be. Trying is enough. We sat together in my living room, in the house I'd worked so hard to own, surrounded by furniture I'd bought with money I'd earned, and I realized this was the real inheritance I was leaving him. Not property or investments or assets, but the knowledge that you can survive anything if you refuse to compromise your worth. That you can build something from nothing if you're willing to work for it. That love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's just enabling. These were lessons you couldn't put in a will or transfer through paperwork. They had to be learned through pain and growth and the hard work of becoming better. And Landon was learning them. Finally, the beach house sold 4 years later, not to strangers, but to a nonprofit that turned it into a retreat center for single mothers needing respite. Landon helped with the negotiations, made sure they got a fair price, even volunteered to help with the renovations. It's better this way, he said as we watched them sign the papers. More people will benefit from it than just me taking vacations there. The rental properties were sold too, over time, with proceeds going to the scholarship fund that bore my mother's name. The investment accounts grew and distributed and funded emergency grants for women escaping violence, women starting businesses, women going back to school. And Landon built his own life, his own savings, his own small portfolio of investments. Nothing compared to what I'd accumulated, but his, earned, meaningful. He got married eventually. Not to Sabrina, she'd moved to Oregon with her teacher husband and sent Christmas cards every year. But to a woman named Rachel who worked in HR and drove a Prius and thought his small apartment was charming. They bought a house together with money they'd both saved, had a baby girl they named after my mother. And when that baby was born, Landon called me from the hospital crying. I get it now, Mom. I finally get it. What you sacrificed for me. What you endured. How much you loved me even when I didn't deserve it. His voice broke. I'm holding my daughter, and all I want is for her to never doubt that she matters more than any amount of money in the world. And I'm so sorry I ever made you doubt that. You don't have to keep apologizing. I know. But I need you to know I understand now. Really understand. And I'm going to be better for her. The kind of father who makes you proud. The kind of son you deserved all along. You already are that son. I'm trying. That's all I ever wanted. I'm 68 now. Landon is 38. His daughter just turned 4. We have dinner every Sunday, all of us together. The tradition we rebuilt from ashes. The scholarship fund has helped over 200 women get degrees. The business grants have launched 43 companies. The emergency fund has pulled countless women out of crisis. And my relationship with Landon is real now, built on truth instead of obligation, sustained by choice instead of guilt. Sometimes he still slips, still says things that reveal the entitlement hasn't completely died. But he catches himself now, apologizes, corrects course, and that's the difference. Not perfection, awareness, effort, growth.
Looking back on that Christmas Eve 5 years ago, I can finally say I'm grateful for it. Not because it didn't hurt, it devastated me, but because it forced me to choose myself, to draw boundaries I should have drawn years earlier, to stop lighting myself on fire to keep someone else warm. And in choosing myself, I didn't lose my son. I found him, the real him, the one who'd been buried under entitlement and manipulation and Sabrina's influence. He was there all along. I just had to be willing to excavate through the rubble to reach him, and he had to be willing to climb out. We both did the work, and now we have something better than what we had before. Not easier, but real. Not perfect, but honest. And I learned something I wish I'd known years ago. The greatest gift you can give someone isn't your money or your property or your unconditional tolerance. It's your boundaries, your self-respect, your refusal to accept less than you deserve. Because only when people learn they can't take you for granted do they finally learn to value you. And that value, that genuine appreciation, that real love, that's the inheritance that actually matters. Everything else is just money. And money, I finally understood, was never the point. If you or someone you know is having a difficult time, free support is available.